This is the Consensus versus Minority View on Climate Change by Krista McSwain. According to the consensus view, CO2 has a known proven effect on heat as a greenhouse gas. The recognition of greenhouse gases such as water vapor and carbon dioxide do have proven implications for the way in which heat can be trapped on Earth's surface versus its natural mechanism of being reflected back into the atmosphere. John Tyndall, an Irish physicist, set the basis for our current understanding of the greenhouse gas effect in 1859. He found that carbon dioxide and water vapor both absorb heat and radiate heat. He stated that these gases cause a tendency to accumulate heat at the surface of the planet. He proposed a hypothesis for climate implications, writing, "Every variation of this constituent must produce a change of climate, and that such changes may in fact have produced all the mutations of climate which the researches of geologists reveal." The modern consensus view asserts that this effect is causing an increase in global temperatures and refers to carbon dioxide as the control knob of Earth's climate. Graphs such as the two above showcase the amount of greenhouse gases is increasing, and global temperatures are also increasing. This, along with the historical conceptualization of greenhouse gases in the scientific community, is fundamental to the belief that this correlation accurately depicts the cause of climate change. On the other hand, the minority shows that there have been increases in global temperatures that are significantly higher than today. There have also been periods where warming did not correlate with rising CO2. The bottom graphs showcase atmospheric CO2 significantly lower than other periods in history. Increases in carbon dioxide and temperature have not been unprecedented, but have occurred at various points throughout history. Ultimately, carbon dioxide represents only 0.04% of Earth's atmosphere, and man-made CO2 only represents 1/27th of that number. Therefore, it cannot be the only indicator and contributor to climate change. Evidence from the consensus shows a correlation during distinct periods, but fails to explain pre-industrial rises of CO2 and temperature. Effects of climate change include wildfires and heat waves, which have been on the rise. The top right graph showcases the average heat wave season in the U.S., increasing from 20 to 23 days in the 1960s to 65 to 70 days currently. The top left graph shows the number of acres burned each year due to wildfires, increasing from 2 million in the early 1980s to 10 million in 2020. Furthermore, rising global temperatures lead to more energy generated in the atmosphere and in the oceans, causing more severe weather events such as hurricanes, thunderstorms, and snowstorms. However, the minority view points out that graphs such as the bottom two showcase graphs that are typically used to support the consensus apply to a broader time frame. Isolating data for a specific period makes the increase appear more drastic. Therefore, natural variability can also explain changes in heat waves, forest fires, hurricanes, etc. Furthermore, the consensus employs not only certain time periods, but also certain data points that do not give an accurate depiction of the crisis itself. An example of this being used is hurricane models employed by the consensus view. These data sets are based on all hurricane activity, regardless of whether or not they make landfall. Naturally, as weather technologies such as satellites have increased our ability to detect storms at sea in the modern era, these graphs will account for more hurricanes as we near the 21st century. Ultimately, the consensus view cherry picks data to invoke fear and make the results appear more concerning. According to the consensus view, a majority opinion should not be dismissed in the realm of science. Examples they typically employ to showcase this are the Doran and Zimmerman survey, which showed that 97% of climate experts agreed with the consensus view, as well as the John Cook study, which showed that 97% of scientific papers also agreed with the consensus view. Furthermore, current models showcased by this consensus, such as the hockey stick graph, are an accurate depiction of the climate crisis. They are validated empirically by comparing the past and present, and they are also validated through the work of other scientists. Due to the vast amounts of peer-reviewed data in support of the consensus view, there is no debate that man-made emissions are a contributing factor to climate change. Objections from the minority are largely in part due to their funding from fossil fuel companies. However, the minority points out that there have been various periods when the majority of scientists were incorrect, such as eugenics. And active engagement with various viewpoints is a crucial element to the evolution of science, and single theory explanations, such as that applied to eugenics, have notoriously been incorrect and harmful. The 97% figures regularly cited by the consensus are based upon questionable interpretations of the data. For example, the Doran and Zimmerman survey excluded all but 77 out of 3,146 respondents that identified as climate experts. Furthermore, the questions were formatted in a way that those with a minority view could comfortably answer yes. And as for the John Cook study, they analyzed 11,944 scientific papers related to climate change, while 2/3 did not express an opinion, 1/3 did, and out of that 1/3, they came to the conclusion that 97% asserted that humans have some effect on climate change. However, there were only 64 papers that stated that human beings have caused a majority of climate change, which only represents 1.6% of the entire sample. The acceptance of the majority viewpoint as a settled theory of climate change relies on peer review among studies. This majority is a common argument in response to those who do not believe climate change is primarily influenced by human activity. However, the peer review claim can also exist with biases. For example, Michael Mann's hockey stick model, which indicates a sharp increase in temperatures as we reach the modern era, has been replicated and reviewed by various scientists. The extensive confirmation of its results had drastic impacts on the validity of the consensus view, with large organizations such as the IPCC using it as a basis for no longer recognizing the existence of the medieval warm period, which it had in 2003. On the other hand, Steve McIntyre and Ross McKittrick found that Mann used two separate data points for his hockey stick graph. The initial proxy data used was based on tree rings in North America, while the latter of the 20th century were based on thermometer recorded data. Furthermore, Mann's algorithm gave one group of trees in California 390 times more weight that showcased the final hockey stick shape. The following graph shows us the results based on one single data set that's based on tree ring data. This drastically contradicts what was shown in Mann's graph. The minority's response to how this data could have been reviewed by various independent studies is that they were not entirely independent. Rather, peer review in the realm of climate science has deeply embedded cliques of scientists that are united in their efforts to receive funding through supporting the consensus view. According to the 2006 Wegman report, we found at least 43 authors have direct ties to Dr. Mann by virtue of co-authored papers with him. Our findings from this analysis suggest that the authors in the area of paleoclimate studies are closely connected, and thus independent studies may not be as independent as they might appear on the surface.